Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. This story is about Jason Miller, a furniture maker whose life and business were destroyed by HOA's greed under the leadership of Karen Williams. But instead of giving up, he rose up to fight, proving that justice is possible even where it seems unattainable. When I first saw the house in the Silvercrest community on the outskirts of Seattle, I thought I had found the perfect place for a new chapter in my life. A spacious yard, quiet streets, friendly neighbors. Everything pointed to this being my ideal spot for living and working. I had long dreamed of opening my own workshop where I could focus on what I loved most, creating unique furniture. This house, with its large garage, was perfect for my project, and I quickly set up a workshop there. At first, everything went smoothly. Neighbors welcomed me, sometimes stopping by to see what I was working on, and even placing orders for furniture. I felt like a part of the community and was confident I could balance living in an upscale neighborhood with running my small business. Each day in the workshop brought me joy, and the orders from clients not only helped cover the bills, but also allowed me to grow my business. However, my dreams of a peaceful life began to crumble when the HOA leadership changed. The amiable Daniel was replaced by Karen Williams. Her name soon became synonymous with trouble for anyone who didn't conform to her vision of an ideal community. From the very first days of her leadership, Karen began implementing strict rules aimed at improving the neighborhood. She claimed her main goal was to raise property values, but in practice, it looked like an attempt to enforce her own vision on everyone. Anything that didn't fit her standards was declared a threat to the community's well-being. At the first HOA meetings, Karen loudly declared that the neighborhood should be a model of order and harmony. Her words sounded convincing, but I quickly noticed there was more to it. Karen's gaze often lingered on my house, particularly on the garage where my workshop was located. Even then, I felt that my place in this community might be at risk. At first, the pressure started subtly, like a faint noise in the distance. Karen Williams began bombarding me with notifications about minor infractions that supposedly ruined the neighborhood's appearance. One of the first such warnings was a letter stating that my trash bins were left by the curb too long after garbage collection. Then came another notice, this time about a too bright sign on my garage, even though there wasn't any sign at all. The real problems began when I received a letter demanding that I address noise pollution from my workshop. This was especially strange, as I strictly adhered to a work schedule, operating only on weekdays from 9 in the morning to 5 in the evening. No loud equipment at night, no complaints from my immediate neighbors, yet I found myself in the HOA's crosshairs. It seemed Karen was deliberately looking for reasons to pick on me. Over time, her attacks grew more aggressive. One day, I received a call informing me that the safety concerns of my business would be discussed at the next HOA meeting. I attended the meeting, hoping for a reasonable dialogue, but instead encountered a cold wall of hostility. Karen declared that my workshop violated the neighborhood's safety and aesthetic standards, and she brought along a few residents who, as it turned out, had long-standing disputes with her on unrelated matters. She used their grievances to bolster her campaign against me. Despite my immediate neighbors speaking out in my defense, Karen persisted. Her strategy was straightforward: overwhelm me with accusations and complaints to force me either to shut down my workshop or leave the neighborhood altogether. With every new complaint, I felt the ground slipping from under me. The culmination came one morning when I found a red sticker on my garage door, subject to HOA safety compliance inspection. It marked the beginning of what I would later call the hardest period of my life. The morning began with a loud knock on the door. Outside the window, I saw a group of people: Karen Williams, 2 of her HOA council assistants, and several uniformed security guards bearing the logo of a private company. They stood with an expression of cold determination, as if preparing for a raid. "Mr. Miller, open the door! This is an HOA inspection," Karen shouted. I opened the door, trying to stay calm, though I was boiling inside. "On what grounds are you showing up at my house without notice?" I asked, standing in the doorway. Karen, her face full of smug satisfaction, waved a folder in the air. "According to Section 14.3 of our bylaws, we have the right to conduct emergency inspections of properties that pose a threat to community safety. We've received numerous complaints about your workshop, and we're obligated to act immediately." My protest that I had received no prior notice didn't faze her. She waved her hand and the guards entered the house without waiting for permission. One of them headed to the garage and opened the door using tools he had clearly brought along. I followed them, recording everything on my phone. "You have no right to enter my home without a warrant. This is illegal," I loudly declared. "Your resistance will be considered obstruction of HOA duties. We are fully entitled to act within the scope of our rules," Karen replied coldly, not even looking up from her paperwork. The guards began searching the workshop as if they were hunting for evidence of wrongdoing. One of them roughly knocked a finished tabletop, a project I had spent 2 weeks working on, onto the floor. "Unstable construction. This could have injured someone," he said with a grin, clearly trying to support Karen. Then came the worst part. Karen declared the workshop a safety hazard and ordered the confiscation of my equipment. My professional tools, machines, materials, everything I had accumulated over the years and relied on for my business was being loaded into a truck parked outside my house. "You can't do this! This is my property!" I shouted, trying to stop the guards. Karen didn't even turn around. According to HOA bylaws, we have the authority to seize potentially dangerous equipment. If you wish to contest this decision, you can take it to court. I continued filming on my phone, and eventually the commotion drew the attention of neighbors. My neighbor Lisa came over. "What's going on, Jason? Why are they taking your things?" I gave her a brief explanation. She was horrified. "This is insane. Your workshop has never bothered anyone." Despite protests from Lisa and other neighbors, the truck was filled to capacity. My tools disappeared behind its doors, and I was left standing on the threshold of my house, feeling empty and powerless. But Karen wasn't done yet. She approached me with an icy smile and said, "Mr. Miller, you will receive additional notices of fines for violating community rules. If you fail to comply, your property may be auctioned." That was the final straw. That very day, I called my lawyer, Sarah. Her voice was calm but resolute. "Jason, not only will we get your tools back, but we'll also hold them accountable for all of this. Tomorrow, I'm filing a lawsuit. In the meantime, document everything and avoid any confrontations with them." I knew that this was the moment when fighting back was no longer a choice. Karen had crossed every line, and now I had to prove that no one has the right to treat a person this way, especially under the guise of the law. This was the start of a battle I intended to win. The day after the incident, I gathered all my records, including the video of the confiscation, and handed them over to my lawyer, Sarah Lawrence. She specialized in cases against HOAs and immediately spotted numerous violations. "This isn't just abuse of power, Jason. This is outright theft," she said, carefully examining the HOA bylaws and how Karen had manipulated them. The first step was filing a report with the police to document the illegal seizure of property. Sarah also filed a court petition to obtain a temporary injunction against any further HOA actions. A few days later, I received confirmation that our actions had drawn the attention of the local press, and journalists began asking questions about the aggressive tactics of the HOA in our neighborhood. Meanwhile, Sarah conducted her own investigation and discovered that Karen had been using her position in the HOA for personal gain. She reached out to neighbors who had also suffered from Karen's pressure, and many agreed to testify on my behalf. Among them was Lisa, my neighbor, who was one of the first to support me during the confiscation. The breakthrough came with the discovery of financial documents showing that Karen was acting in the interests of a developer planning to build a commercial center on the site of several homes. These documents revealed that she had been deliberately creating conflicts with homeowners to force them to sell their properties for a pittance. With sufficient evidence in hand, we filed a lawsuit against the HOA, Karen personally, and the development company. Sarah crafted a strategy that not only challenged Karen's actions, but also exposed her conflict of interest. Our materials included video recordings, neighbor testimonies, and even copies of her correspondence obtained during preliminary hearings. Karen realized the situation was spiraling out of her control. She attempted to exert pressure through her allies in the HOA, but it was already too late. The court accepted the case, and a date for the first hearing was set. For the first time, I felt that I had a real chance not only to reclaim my property, but also to restore justice. "We'll make sure this serves as a lesson for them for a lifetime," Sarah said confidently as we prepared the court materials. I knew the battle was far from over, but for the first time, I felt that I had strong support and a real chance of victory. The court proceedings began in a tense atmosphere. Karen Williams arrived with an expensive lawyer, clearly hoping that her money and connections would help her avoid accountability. She tried to portray me as a violator who allegedly disturbed the peace of the neighborhood and ignored HOA rules. But Sarah was prepared for any tricks. At the first hearing, the judge carefully listened to both sides. Sarah began by presenting a video showing security guards forcibly breaking into my garage and removing tools. She then introduced testimonies from neighbors, including Lisa, who stated that my workshop was never a source of noise or inconvenience. Lisa stood out with her determination. Jason is a model neighbor. Karen just abused her power to drive him out. When it was time to present financial documents, Karen visibly grew nervous. Sarah provided evidence of her correspondence with the developer, which revealed that Karen deliberately created conflicts to advance her interests. Your Honor, these documents clearly show that Karen Williams's actions were motivated by greed and personal gain, not concern for the community, Sarah emphasized. Karen tried to defend herself, claiming that she acted in the interest of the residents, but her words sounded unconvincing. The judge asked her to explain the absence of official complaints about my workshop, to which Karen merely shrugged and said, "The residents were afraid to express their dissatisfaction openly." This argument failed to garner any sympathy. During the second hearing, the judge heard from experts invited by Sarah. They confirmed that the equipment in my workshop posed no danger and that I had adhered impeccably to all regulations. An independent auditor's report was also presented, uncovering financial irregularities in the HOA's accounts under Karen's leadership. The climax came with the testimony of the developer summoned to court by subpoena. A company representative admitted that Karen was indeed associated with their project, but sought to distance themselves from her actions. "We did not instruct her to break the law," he stated. This only worsened Karen's position as it highlighted her independent intentions. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. The HOA was ordered to return all my tools and compensate me for lost income and emotional distress. Karen was personally found guilty of abuse of power and fraud. She was fined and prohibited from holding leadership positions in any organization. When the hearing concluded, I felt a sense of relief that is hard to put into words. Sarah hugged me and said, "You didn't just win the case, Jason. You put them in their place." I knew there was still a lot of work ahead to rebuild my business, but at that moment, I felt victorious. Karen could no longer abuse her authority, and our community could finally breathe freely. The victory in court was a turning point, but its consequences turned out to be even more significant for me and for our entire community. Karen Williams, stripped of her position and burdened with fines, was forced to sell her house to cover legal expenses. Her reputation in the neighborhood was destroyed, and she could no longer participate in the management of any organizations. Immediately after the court's decision, reforms began in the HOA's operations. The board was completely reorganized, and people who genuinely wanted to improve community life replaced Karen. The new HOA members held open hearings where residents could express their opinions and concerns. For many of us, this was a chance to restore justice and rebuild trust in the association. My tools, though returned, were in a deplorable state. Some were damaged, others clearly misused. However, the compensation paid by the HOA allowed me not only to restore my workshop, but also to modernize it. I purchased new equipment, improved the ventilation system, and even added soundproofing so that neighbors would never feel discomfort from my business. One of the most gratifying outcomes was the surge of interest in my work. The story of my struggle with the HOA spread through local news, and many city residents learned about me. Orders began to pour in one after another. People saw me not just as a craftsman, but as someone who stood up against injustice. This trust inspired me to create even more complex and beautiful projects. The community also changed. Now we hold regular meetings to discuss ideas for improving the neighborhood. New transparency rules have been implemented. All HOA decisions are now made only after residents vote, and finances are published openly. This gave each of us a sense of security and confidence that no one could abuse their power anymore. My neighbor Lisa became one of the most active participants in these meetings. She proposed organizing a mutual aid program for neighbors in need of repairs or other support. I eagerly became part of this initiative, offering my services to restore homes or create new decorative elements. Karen has not been seen in our neighborhood since. The last rumors suggested she moved to another state. However, her story became a lesson for all of us. We now understand how important it is to stay vigilant about the actions of those who govern our community and to defend our rights, even when it requires tremendous effort. Today, when I hear the sound of tools running in my workshop, I feel not only the joy of doing what I love, but also pride in standing up for my right to live and work as I see fit. My workshop has become not only a place of creativity, but also a symbol of resilience and justice. The events of recent months changed me forever. I experienced shock, anger, and despair, but ultimately found the strength to fight. This was not just a battle for tools or a workshop. It was a fight for the right to be heard, for justice, and for dignity. There is much to learn from this story. First, never underestimate the importance of documentation and knowing your rights. If I hadn't recorded everything, taken photos, and gathered evidence, Karen might have won. Second, true strength lies in community support. Without my neighbors like Lisa and their willingness to stand by me, I wouldn't have succeeded. Now I understand how important it is to hold on to your beliefs. It would have been easy to give up, sell the house, and leave, but that would have only encouraged people like Karen to continue their schemes. Instead, I stayed, fought, and proved that even one person can change the system. Today, my workshop is not just a workplace, but a symbol of the possibility of justice. I use it not only to create furniture, but also to help others. Our mutual aid initiative has gained popularity, and I am proud to contribute to strengthening our community. I have also begun participating in public initiatives aimed at reforming HOAs in other neighborhoods. People come to me for advice on dealing with injustice, and I share my experiences. The story of Karen Williams and her attempt to ruin my life now serves as a lesson for many. Everything that happened showed me how important it is to stand your ground, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. Life tests us, but how we handle these challenges determines our future. I chose the path of resistance and am proud of it. Now, sitting in my workshop and looking at the upgraded equipment, I feel satisfied, not just from the victory, but from making our community stronger. If someone tries to follow in Karen's footsteps in the future, I am confident that we will be ready to stand against them. This story doesn't have an entirely happy ending, but it has something more important, a lesson, and I hope it will help not only me, but also everyone who faces injustice. Together, we can change more than we think. The key is to believe in yourself and your allies.